So that's my Rainbird app. Turn the Rainbird app on. So we water the garden pretty much every day with our irrigation. Mow, please. So we're going to turn it on. We've got a station here, run for an hour. We're going to run it, send it to controller. The pump's going to come on right down there. Okay, it's on. All right, you got your valves open?
Yeah.
Okay, so now one of the things we did is put irrigation into the garden so that we don't have to water with a can anymore or a hose, which has worked real well. How long does it take us to water the garden?
10 minutes,
10
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Not very long.
Yep. So this video is Mittleider. We're going to talk about Mittleider. So last year when we moved here, we did videos building the garden, and we terraced it because we really never had a garden. So we terraced it. This year we started thinking about the garden, and then I ran across this on YouTube and started looking into it, and this guy has been around a long time. Okay, well, Dr. Mittleider is dead now. That's how long he's been around. But where did it start? In the mid-1970s, it became very popular. It's been around for a while. So this is a exactly how to, with nice pictures, how to build that garden that you see down there, and talks about different ways to do it. So what we're going to talk about today is what we like about it and what we wish we would have known in the book. Overall, it's been awesome. It was a tremendous amount of work to build it. It took Shelly and I probably a full week of just leveling and building the boxes and putting the dirt in it. That was a lot of work. And then of course we've spent more time putting gravel in the paths and the fencing and the irrigation and stuff like that. That didn't include the time for the irrigation, building that. So, and then of course you got doing the garden itself, which takes a lot of time. I can see why people who don't live at home and work like we do, this would be very difficult to do. Because weeds grow very quickly, the plants grow very quickly, they need a lot of love and care. So first thing I would say is it takes a lot of time. Second thing I'd say is not cheap for the way we did it, the way you do it, to the initial outlay. So I have a sawmill, so I was able to cut all the lumber for all the boxes. So we had the logs and we have the lumber, so we cut all that lumber. Otherwise, that many 2x10s, that's a lot of 2x10s down there for us. We want to talk about
buttons.
Buttons?
You said so.
So buttons. We want to talk about pros and cons of the Mittleider.
Okay.
Because I think there's probably a lot of people out there who are looking at it like I was, like we were, looking at the Mittleider system. Of course, I brought this to you and said, this is what we're going to do.
And I poo-pooed you.
I know.
I like working in the dirt.
Right, I know. What's your opinion now?
I'm 50-50.
50-50?
Yeah, I still like working in the dirt.
We are. I mean, we're growing.
Yeah, but I feel like we're cheating.
We're cheating.
Yeah, with raised boxes and...
Raised boxes.
You know,
and it's not dirt.
And it's not dirt.
What is it?
It's sand and sawdust. Sand
and sawdust. So that's the first thing you got to know is that there's different. Well, you can use dirt. You don't even have to use boxes with this system. It doesn't call for boxes necessarily. We just did it for several reasons. One is because we don't have very good dirt at all. And two is that it's not level.
Right.
So to make it level was very difficult.
Right.
We had that trouble last year.
And you like the straight rows.
I like straight rows. Yep.
Right.
And I also like the idea of being able to control what's in the boxes.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about, while we talk about our Mittleider system, we want to talk about 4 things that we found out that we didn't know, that we wish we had known. First, let's talk about the amount of work it takes to do this. That was not one of the 4, that'll be the 5th. The amount of work it takes to do this is incredible. Before you start, you really need to think about the lay of your land. Like we are on a hill, a fairly steep hill. You can look over there and it drops right off. We have a 7 or 8 log high berm that we built and backfilled just to try to get a little bit more area. Last year we had terraced this because it was such sloped so far down. One of the reasons I like the boxes is because we could get the boxes level. So the first thing we had to do when we did the boxes is we had to decide, first of all, how many boxes we could fit in there, what we wanted to put in the boxes, and we needed to think about where the boxes were in relation to the sun so that we didn't have high stuff on the sunny side which shaded the lower side. So we have to think about all of that stuff before you ever start. The thing we didn't know is, because our land slopes, you'll see that this is a 10-inch, which is a 9¼ inch board. You can see only 4 inches of it are showing. And down here on the lower end, you'll see that not only are 4 inches, is the whole 10 inches showing, but there's another 14 or 15 inches below the box. That's how much we drop off. So what we did is we split the boxes into two so that we step down. Otherwise, if I'd have taken this box all the way out, that box would have been 3 feet up in the air. That makes sense? So we dropped the box down, which is fine. It's not a big deal, but it is a big deal filling in those boxes and getting all this level so that the paths work, as well as you get this, you got this dirt built under all these boxes. So you have to build the boxes, make them level, and then backfill them. And that's a lot of work, because you have to backfill them to get them level, and then you fill them with the sawdust and the sand combination. Another thing to think about is when you're doing that is, how are you going to get the sand and the sawdust in the garden once you've built everything? So we had a lot of trouble because you can't access our garden from our road. We had to use the excavator, and I'm sure you could stick something in there. We had to use the excavator, drop the sand and the sawdust in, and then bucket it around. Lot of work, lot of work. The thing we didn't know about the boxes is that if we set the box up high like this, the water tends to run out the bottom of the box. Much easier. So we get runoffs like that one. See on that side, that's a bad one right there. So the water does not stay in the box and hold in the box like it should. It runs out, okay? What else, anything else about the boxes? We don't, as far as the 4 foot, so this is a 4 foot box and that's an 18-inch box. So that's really 2 boxes. This is 2 of those boxes. We did this because we figured that it would be less lumber and easier to maintain to be able to just do 1 box. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is, of course, you can get a lot more plants. You can get 4 rows of plants in 1 box, and you can get either 2 or 1 row in the 18-inch box, depending on what you're growing. So the terrain, I guess, would be number 1. And the terrain and how you do your boxes. Number 2, irrigation. So the way you do the irrigation is you get 3/4 inch pipe. You're supposed to drill it so that there's a hole down a center line and then 2 holes either side of the center line on 45-degree angles. So when you put your water in, it shoots off at 45 and straight down like that. Well, when we did this, I didn't have a drill press. So we kind of went down the center line of the pipe with a drill, and you use a little bitty number 57 bit, which breaks very easily. So we did that, and then I just said, okay, this is 45 degrees, and we drilled them. So each one of these 8-foot pieces of pipe has 96 holes in it, each one of these. And I don't know how many there are. We can count them all, but there's a lot of holes, a lot of holes. And we probably got a little bit tired of drilling holes, and we didn't have a line to drill them on. So what happens is we've got holes that shoot straight out, and so the water shoots straight out onto the aisle instead of going down into the bed. And so it's very crucial that you do that holes exactly like they say. It needs to be coming out no more than at 45-degree angles, because otherwise it's a mess.
Well, and also when we were doing it, some of it, probably me, didn't go all the way through.
Yep.
Right? Or take out the
shavings from the drill bit.
from the drill bit. So some of the holes, you know, spew out, and then I'll have a section where just like maybe trickles.
Yeah, they won't, and I can't get them out. I've tried to ream them and won't come out. So the other thing is we could not get irrigation 3/4 pipe. You need to use, it's called 200 PSI pipe. You need to use the thin wall pipe. I think that's a big problem with our holes and why our holes didn't work, because we use more expensive, it's more expensive too. We use regular Schedule 40 pipe. It's thicker walled and it doesn't drill as easy. So you really need to use that. Another part about the irrigation. See where you bring the irrigation down, then you drop it down and come here. Well, what happens, this is sort of gravity irrigation. Yeah, there's pressure in the pipes, but we've got 3 boxes open at the same time, let all the water come through. And because there's so many holes, it kind of gravity feeds. You got plugs on the end of these so that you can drain crap that gets in them. But what happens is you get pressure built up, and what happens is the water will all come down to the bottom. You'll get plenty of pressure at the bottom, but you won't get pressure at the top. And the way I did the irrigation, I can show you right here. See, I brought the feed line in right here and then teed and went that way. Well, what happens is all the pressure's right here. So these first couple of lines get lots of pressure, those don't. So you've got to make sure, and they don't explain that in here, but when you put your line on and you're doing multiple lines with one valve, you want to make sure your valve is either in the middle or that you valve every line. I should have valved every line, and I will do that for next year, maybe even this year. We will redo all of the pipe next year. So just turn the pump off with my phone. Number 3. These are called T-frames, and these are built for plants that grow vertically. A vertically growing plant, and we are to learn all of this, a vertically growing plant is called a determinate, because you determine where it goes. An indeterminate plant is a plant that grows towards the ground. So for instance,
like my bush beans are indeterminate, right? Because they don't want to grow up a line, whereas the cucumber plants are determinate, and you can see how lovely they're just going right up that line.
So one of the things about determinate plants we found out, again from YouTube, there's all kinds of ways to do this. There's all kinds of ways to run the wire. They're not specific about how to run it. So you run something on the top, and then you run something on the bottom, and then you tie line between them. And you have to make sure that some of these are carrying a lot of weight. When we get the tomatoes over there, you'll see there's a lot of tomatoes on these lines, and every one of these plants can weigh, I'll bet you they can weigh 50, 75 pounds. So all of those plants are hanging on that line. Well, that's big electric fence line. That's what that is. That's not going to break. And this is 150 pound sisal, so this is not going to break. So you tie these up, and then what you have to do is figure out, some people say you just wrap this line around the plant as it grows. And then I found these, again on YouTube. These are so cool. These you just take and you put them on the line like that, you close it, and it binds on the line, and then you snap it around the plant. So we have used those, you can see it on those plants. We use these on all of the climbing plants that need, even when we're training like a cucumber that has tendrils that grow onto it, onto the line, we still use these to teach it how to grow. So these are highly recommended, and they're cheap. They're real cheap. Get them online. So, but you want to make sure about the weight. The other thing is we saw different ways of tying, because these always have to be adjusted, because they get loose, they get tight. So you got to adjust them. When they're baby plants, they're loose and hanging. As they get bigger, you want to start tightening them and tighten them until they're pretty tight, so to hold the weight. Well, we figured out finally the best way to do this is with a simple trucker's knot. And a trucker's knot is simply, you just take a line and you just go down and around the line and back through like that.
Like a slip knot.
Like a slip knot, but you got to go down, not up. And then you just pull this through, and then you have you double your force, right? Just like a pulley. Pull that guy up, and then you do another slip knot to tighten it, and you can adjust them very easily. Like we tried, and we saw a guy use pieces of wood. He said, oh, this is easy. No, I burned all that. I tried that, I burned all that. This works great. And you want to make sure that you tie everything with slip knots here and down here, so at the end of the year, you just pull the slip knots and you got your line. You don't have to recut all the line. These were easy to do. We oiled these with a mixture of our motor oil, used motor oil, hydraulic oil. So these will be good for a long time. That's 3, right?
3.
I have one more. What was the other one? Ah, here's one we didn't know. We've got 4 boxes of corn here, And we found out just as soon as that corn started getting big, we found out that the plants started falling over on their own very easily. And so Shelly went on to the Facebook Mittleider forum and started asking. They go, oh, that's why we don't use sawdust and sand, because the corn falls over. Nobody told us that. It's not in the book. So what we ended up having to do is tie lines. We got a real thin sisal, and we just tied lines, and we're holding the corn up. And we had a huge storm a couple days ago, and a lot of these plants got knocked right over. We didn't have the line up here or there. So we've got these held up, and I've actually got them clipped off down here trying to save them. But we hope they'll go well. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So that's the other thing. Don't plant your corn in sand and sawdust. Now, the sand and sawdust is a 75%, 25% mixture, 75% sawdust, 25% sand. We use river sand because we can get it here locally. And the sawdust, of course, I get from the sawmill. So I got lots of sawdust. But you'd be amazed at how much sand and sawdust you go through. I think I bought 7 yards of sand, which means I've used 21 yards of sawdust. A yard bucket is bigger than our skid steer bucket. It's big. Wow. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. So that's 4 things that we have found out about Mittleider so far. There's a couple of things they told us that do work phenomenally. Now we have access to slate. This is slate like we use everywhere on the farm, but we put the slate down. We rolled out ground cloth and then put the slate over the ground cloth. We probably have videos showing of that too. And that has worked out phenomenally. And one of the things they do is everybody goes, well, your aisles are too wide. Well, you want your aisles wide and you want them bare. So you can see, I just went through and trimmed all the plants. We keep all of the plants trimmed. I just take a pair of scissors and trim all of the plants that I can. I can't do the carrots, but I do almost all of the plants that I can, trim them up so there's as little green touching the ground as possible. And you want, think of the aisles as a desert, so that if a bug does get in, he's got to cross the Saharan desert to get to the next, so you don't pass bugs along with diseases or anything else. And the diseases come from stuff laying in your garden that rots, and then diseases get into that and travel up the plant. So you want to keep it, you want to keep your garden weed free. And I'll pick all of this up. Of course, the chickens eat all of this, so I feed it all of the chickens. But we try to keep this all as clean and dry, and it helps to walk too. That way, and the carts and everything else. So this I love about the Mittleider is that how much they keep it. They tell you to keep it really clean. So, but so far we're real happy. So we can show you that, stuff that's, you can see the corn's doing real well. We've got, these are pole beans that we planted next to the corn that's growing up the corn. So this corn now we have our first actual corn growing. There's one there and there's one there. So they're starting to come out now. And then this is potatoes. These are lima beans. All these flowers will be lima beans. These potatoes will be ready in about 30 days. Those are potatoes, and the far one is sweet potatoes. So those will all be ready soon. This row right here is, this is green beans, and these guys are just going berserk. Shelly's, we're already freezing green beans, so they're coming out really well. These are pepper plants, and we just strung this. They were starting to fall over, so I made this string for them. And where did I see? Here's one. There's a guy coming up right there. We've already taken 2 off, but so the peppers are coming up. We're getting peppers now. Those are, there's more corn plants there too. I had to put strings on those too. Those are cauliflower. Mm. That's what those are. I don't see any cauliflower yet, but the bugs sure went to the leaves. This is this kale or some kind of greens? It just keeps growing. We can't stop it from growing, so we leave it in there. But here's what's coming now, is these tomatoes. We got lots and lots of tomatoes coming. These will be ready in a day or two. Our first tomatoes will be ready in a day or two. So But you can see this is working really well. So I ran another line across the middle so I could split the plants like this. The more air and the more light you can get into them, the better they're going to be. The less bugs they're going to be, and the better they're going to grow. So we've got all kinds of tomatoes in here. We got little bitty cherry tomatoes like that. And the reason is because about 4 or 5 years ago, I gave Shelly a emergency seed kit, and she planted all of the tomatoes that were in that kit, all kinds of tomatoes. So here's one of these guys that's come loose. So I'll retighten it, just put it back on there. But you can see that plant's pretty heavy, right? With those, look at all those tomatoes on there. That's heavy. And there's another batch coming out there. These are cantaloupes. Don't see any cantaloupes yet though. These are watermelon. Don't see any watermelon yet. Those are what I'm waiting for. But all the tomato plants seem to be doing really well. These are squash. Here's one coming right there, like a yellow squash. And again, these are determinate plants. You determine where they grow. So you'll see I cut off all the bottom leaves and everything. I try to keep them, trimmed. Try to keep all of the bottom leaves off so that nothing can get to them from the ground. So you can see the ground's pretty clean in the garden. The other thing about the Mittleider system is that the reason sawdust and sand works is because we supply all the nutrients in the water. So we come in every Sunday and fertilize with a Mittleider defined fertilization, and then we water every day unless it rains. And so we're making sure that the water and the nutrients are in for the plants. It doesn't matter what they grow in. I never would have believed it, that they'd grow in sand and sawdust. So, but they do. So this is all, I just tied up all the squash plants and trimmed them all up. That's what all this debris is that I've got to clean up. There's cucumbers growing. We got enough cucumbers to make lots and lots of whatever you make cucumbers from. I don't know what that is, but there they're coming. So I think that I would highly recommend Mittleider system. Because it tells you step by step by step. We're not gardeners. We've never done this, right? So we tried last year, but we didn't do real well. We had tomatoes, but I think this year we're going to do pretty well on all our stuff. And the reason is because it's a system. And I like systems. I like going, first you do this, then you do that, you know, and then you get this. So I think if you're looking for a system to do, even if it's one grow box just doing tomatoes, yeah, it takes time to build the boxes, put them in. It takes time to build this. You got to buy the materials and all that. But once you have that, it's up there every year, and you go back every year. You don't have to worry about how good your soil is. You don't have to worry about anything like that. All you got to do is put the stuff in the ground, make sure you fertilize it and water it and weed it, which you have to do anyway. So I would highly recommend a Mittleider system to somebody who's looking to get in a garden. Yesterday